Hey, what's up, y'all? This is Lewis Speaks 2024, and today I want to talk to y'all about the over eroticized emotions of men. You know, as men, oftentimes we are socialized when we are very young to suppress our emotions. We're told that it's not okay for us to cry. We're told that it's not okay for us to show emotion because showing emotion is the equivalent of being weak, is the equivalent of being lesser. And in a way, this definitely speaks to our misogynistic, patriarchal society in which women are oftentimes perceived as lesser or as weaker individuals. But I realize that oftentimes men have used sex as a way to express their emotions. And I think that oftentimes men eroticize their emotions through sex and use sex as a conduit in order to express difficult feelings, rather than say, I'm lonely, I'm sad, I am hurting. They rather say, let's have sex, and they use sex as a way to process difficult emotions. And I wrote a poem in the past where I was encouraging women to stop letting men cry into their vaginas, because oftentimes I've noticed that men use a woman's vagina as a Kleenex and as a safety net for their misdirected emotions. And I think, for one, this is wrong, totally. I want to first make that clear. Dear men, stop using women as rehabilitation centers. Women are not rehabilitation centers for wounded men. They're not. And the thing about it is, we as men have got to do our work. We have got to really, really come inward. And we have got to realize that it's okay for us to cry. It's okay for us to show emotion, to express our feelings of sadness, depression, and also reach out and ask for help. It takes a soldier to ask for help, especially in a society where we are constantly socialized and conditioned to always brave everything alone. Oftentimes we live in this world where the lone wolf archetype is celebrated, going it alone, braving it alone. And the thing about it is this: we are not islands unto ourselves. We need support. We need love. We need nurturance. When you think about it in the grand scheme of things, we are all God's children. And as God's children, we need that nurturance, that spiritual support. Children, when you think about a child, they need the nurturance and the support of an adult in order to thrive and grow and realize their full potential. So why not us? We think that oftentimes you reach a certain age and you no longer need that support. You now have a level of independence where you can do things for yourself. So it's presumed. But I'm going to tell you, that's the operative word, presumed, because oftentimes the reality is we are still children in adult bodies, and we still need that nurturance. We have a higher level of care, sure. We require a higher level of care than when we were younger, but at the same time, we still need that love and support. And I think, for one, it's our responsibility as men to realize and admit that to ourselves. Realize the many ways that we have been tricked into believing that we don't need support. Realize the messaging that we received, the counterfeit messaging that we received about masculinity, and begin to unravel and unpack that. And for a lot of us, it's like those Christmas lights that are way, way in the garage, that are just so entangled and deeply entrenched within one another. It becomes really difficult to detangle those messages that we received growing up, but we need to do that. That's the work we need to do. And I think society as a whole, it needs to really begin to embrace men and offer tenderness, compassion. Don't see men as toxic. I hate that term, toxic masculinity. I hate that. I much prefer wounded masculinity, because there are a lot of wounded men out here. I'm not going to deny that. But at the same time, wounded, it has a connotation. It has a connotation of compassion. It makes space and it expands and it makes room for compassion. So I think society has got to do its work in offering that tenderness, you know? And we as men, again, stop using women as rehabilitation centers. Stop using other men, too, as rehabilitation centers. Because there's a lot of transference. There's a lot of men who never really had positive, healthy male role models. And so what ends up happening is that there's a lot of transference within their friendships with men, within also other relationships. Even there's a romantic relationship. Gay men, I've noticed, struggle with this transference and this misdirected anger towards men, this misandry, this hatred towards men. They're angry, they're disappointed. The daddies never showed up for them. Their fathers were inconsistent, their fathers were abusive, their fathers were emotionally withholding. So many different, just traumas that they have experienced at the hands of men. And so what ends up happening is that they transfer these feelings, these negative emotions, in their friendships with men, in their relationships with men. And it's not okay. It's not okay. So stop crying into these men, into these women, and using sex as a way to cry into their bodies. I always say that sex are the tears that we refuse to cry. And so we eroticize our emotions. We try to be seductive and paint this alluring quality so that way we are wanted. If people want us, then we are safe. If people want us, we don't have to deal with our feelings. We allow them to deal with our feelings. Let them unpack it, right? Wrong. That's your job. You are tasked with the responsibility of taking accountability for the messaging that you received. We all, not one of us, has escaped the negative messaging and conditioning that we have received in this world. We have all been brainwashed by a lot of people that we've trusted, by a lot of institutions that we've trusted. We've been brainwashed. And so the reality now becomes to undo and deprogram and reprogram ourselves. Because the thing about it is as long as we continue to carry this, we're never, never, never going to heal. We're going to go from person to person to person to person. We're going to keep on eroticizing our emotions. We're going to keep on suppressing our emotions. And then we become a ticking time bomb, just waiting to explode. And that's why you see so many men falling from grace. They never really tapped into their emotional lives. We all have this emotional life that for some oftentimes it gets deprived. It gets deprived of the love and nurturance that it needs in order to thrive and grow. And so what ends up happening is that we begin to act out. We begin to act out. We begin to act in very inappropriate ways. Very inappropriate ways. When you think about the scandals, a lot of the scandals that men have been associated with, it's because they have this faulty definition of masculinity. And they never really got in touch with their emotions. And so what ends up happening is that all those buried emotions begin to build and build and build and build. And one day, like a volcano, just erupted. And these men begin to self-sabotage. And this self-sabotage is once again the psyche's way of saving itself. It's saying there's something going on here. There's something wrong here. I need you to take a look at this right now. And oftentimes men will defer their feelings. They will ignore their feelings until that fateful day when they begin to explode. And then they're forced to deal with their emotions. They're forced to come to terms with what happened. They're forced to deal with the many ways in which they have eroticized their emotions and have contributed to their own demise and destruction. So once again, we as men have got to do something about our emotional life. This is a call to action. This right here is a call to action, because if we do not do anything about our emotional lives will do something to us. So I say this, the feelings that you bury now are going to be the feelings that you have to unearth later on. So you might as well do the work of unearthing those very difficult emotions, because if you don't do the work now, the work is going to do you. It's going to do you in. You know, what you refuse to acknowledge now, trust, it will come up later. You cannot run from your healing, because your healing always knows your address and it will find you. You either do the work or the work is going to do you. And you're not going to always like how the work does you, because sometimes we are led to our healing by being broken. By being broken, it takes some kind of situation, some trauma, some experience that have led us into therapy, because we refuse to acknowledge it on our own. And so once again, don't let that breakdown lead you to a breakthrough. You know, my thing is this: do the work now. Take those preemptive steps now to heal now while you still have time, because the thing about it is this: if you don't, you're going to continue to self-sabotage. Your life is going to tell on you. It's going to tell on you all the secrets that you have hidden, every lie that you have told yourself, all the denial systems that you have built up in your mind. It's all going to come crashing down like a house of cards. And so do the work right now. Begin to unpack why you eroticize your emotions. What emotions are you eroticizing? What are you not allowing yourself to deal with? What things are you continuing to run from? What do you need to tell yourself that you are not telling yourself? What have you been avoiding? That's the thing. What have you been avoiding by using sex, drugs, alcohol as outlets, as escape hatches? What have you been avoiding? And that's important to really, really address. So I hope this video was helpful. This was just a minor tidbit I wanted to put out there into the world for all my men who are striving to figure out what's going on. And, you know, also for my women to help better understand what's going on with their men or the men in their life. Because a lot of times we as men, we are taught so many wrong things about masculinity. You know, I always saw masculinity as a cautionary tale, because a lot of the men in my life were dysfunctional. They were not to be admired. If anything, they were to be feared, avoided, and oftentimes just overlooked. I was always taught to not be like that person, not be like that man in my life. Truth be told, if you want to know the honest truth, I call myself the first success story in my family in terms of the men. I am the first male success story in my family. All the other men in my family have gone to the wayside. There's not one person in my family who's a man that has been a role model for me. They all have been cautionary tales. They all fell to the wayside. They all got caught up by their own unhealed wounds. And so I'm asking God, please, let me be the first to break this generational curse. Let me be the first to break this generational curse, so that way future generations of men could see me as a touchstone, could see me as a role model. I could set a precedent. Finally, there's a man in our family who can actually break through, So that's my wish. So I hope this video was helpful. And if you're like me, if you're the only man in your family that is successful, that is I would say a role model, trust and believe, continue to do your work. Continue so that way you set a precedent within your family of being the only man that has made it. And that continues, because this is a journey, not a destination, that continues to do the work. As I say before, healing is never a journey. Matter of fact, scratch that. Healing is never a destination. Healing is always a journey. So we got to keep on doing our work. I love y'all. Peace.